With Julie Robinson. I'm Sarah Walworth, and I've invited Julie here to join me to talk today about pattern grading. Hi, Julie.
Hi, how's it going? Good to see you, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to pull up the chats here so that I can see everyone in Facebook and on YouTube. I'm going to watch the chats there, so if you guys have questions, just throw them in the comments there and let me know if you guys have any questions specifically that you would like to ask Julie about pattern grading. So let's jump in real quick. Julie, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came into the knitting industry.
How did I get into the knitting industry?
Yeah.
So my background is in fashion design, and I've been working as a designer here in New York for a little over a decade now. And so I've always had an interest in clothes and knitting, and kind of what led me to want to study fashion design in the first place was this like appreciation for craft. So, working in the industry for fashion design is a lot different than working in the craft industry, and I found that I was kind of missing a lot day-to-day making and being like really hands-on materials. So I started designing patterns kind of for myself and started publishing just for fun, and especially around the beginning of the pandemic, I had a little bit more time on my hands. So I began to explore some other things, and using some of my expertise that I gained while I've been working in the fashion design industry to help knitters and crocheters at what they like to do. So that's kind of a short version of how I ended up here.
That's fascinating. So right now you are going to be doing a pattern grading warm-up next week, and you're offering this as kind of a workshop to help people get started grading patterns for knitting and crochet. Is that correct?
Correct. It's for knitters and crocheters. It's for designers. It's for tech editors. If you work in the industry and you work in the process of bringing garment patterns into being, this is something that you should know about. This is something you should be familiar with. But yeah, to your point, I am teaching the pattern grading warm-up. This is kind of an introduction to the process of pattern grading. So we'll talk about what it is. We'll talk about your first couple of steps that you need to know to get started. And I just wanted this to be a really easy, accessible on-ramp for people who want to learn about pattern grading, about sizing, and start to incorporate that as something that they offer their clients or something that they can do themselves in order to write more and better garment patterns.
So what exactly is pattern grading? For someone who has no idea what this word means, what's a simple definition?
Pattern grading is a process of creating multiple sizes from one sample. So when we are designing, you start with a sketch, then you progress to a swatch, and then finally you make a full sample, which is what the item should look like when it's finished. So after you have the sample, then you need to make it into multiple sizes so that other people who are not you, who are not your model, are able to wear it. So that's the basics of it. And one of my goals with this class is not just to teach people that process, though that's the bulk of it, but we also talk about things like size inclusion and how important it is to become familiar with making samples or making sizes for people who are kind of like more on the margin. So those with larger bodies, those with smaller bodies, those who have unique challenges. How do we meet those? How do we meet those needs in our customers?
So do you have to have like a fashion design degree to grade? Do you have to go to fashion school to learn how to grade? Like, what are the do I have to be certified to grade?
You don't need to be certified. You don't need to go to fashion school. In fact, most of the things that I learned about pattern grading, I kind of learned out in the field, especially when you're in fashion school, you're not doing production. That's not the focus of your fashion education, but this is something that you start to learn when you are, working with different brands, seeing how different brands create their sizes, how they go about creating new blocks for new styles. But no, you go to fashion school for this sort of thing. And that's something that I'm trying to do with this class, is take what I've learned from working with all of these different brands and working on a variety of categories. So a category would be something like sweaters, like knitting. But in my time working in the industry, I've worked on things that are, way beyond that. I've done dresses. I've worked on things that are like woven. So, I have a rich background in not just pattern grading, but like garment design. So that's something that I'm trying to bring to this class, is to kind of distill down exactly what knitters and exactly what crocheters need to know about pattern grading without bogging you down with like all of this other stuff that can go into creating, but maybe might not be applicable to those of us who are working in knits, and specifically in hand knits. I say knits. Knits is kind of a colloquial word we use. Like knits can apply to knits and crochet in the world and in fashion design, just to be clear. I'm not trying to exclude anybody here.
Yeah, that makes sense. So thank you everyone for joining us live. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions for Julie, throw them into the comments wherever you're watching from. Why is it important to know how to grade well? Like, why is it important for people in our industry of producing hand knitting patterns and crochet patterns, where there's just like something you download for and you make with your own hands, not like on a machine, or for garment industry manufacturing? Why do we need to know how to grade well? Like, can't we just like make it work?
I mean, you can make it work. As a designer, as an editor, our job is to create the best patterns that we can. Patterns are a tool. So this is kind of, people's first block. Like, this is where we're starting from. Not all patterns are going to work for all people all of the time. But what a well-written pattern will do, what a well-graded pattern will do, is give you this like really good starting point to create a garment that will be custom, that will fit you really, really well. So that's why
we
it's
modify. We modify those patterns to fit our bodies.
the patterns. Yeah, it's not always going to work for everybody out of the box. That's not something that we can accommodate. That's that's couture, that's custom. But when we create a pattern, we can create something that is roughly human shaped.
Right.
Because sometimes, depending on what kind of methods you're using, there's some like general rules of thumb that have been very popular for decades, but honestly just don't work for all people. I think that's like one of the other questions you had was about the Elizabeth Zimmermann system.
Yeah, why can't we just like plug and play, like use Elizabeth Zimmermann's percentage system and just put it in all the sizes?
Right. So the reason we can't do that, it's not that we don't use percentages in grading. You can, and in my course in pattern grading bootcamp, we get into how you can use percentages to effectively grade garments. The problem specifically with things like Elizabeth Zimmermann's system is that it kind of starts comparing apples to oranges. So it's not just like using a percentage, it's using a percentage of, say, your wrist and comparing it to something like your chest. Like, the circumference of your chest has no bearing on the circumference of your wrist. Like, these are just different parts of your body. So that's why a system like that doesn't really work, especially once you, again, get to like those edges of the size chart. So if you're on the extremely small end, if you're on the, the larger end, then, things get really wonky really fast.
So let me just reiterate that, like re-say that for our audience who might not have heard this before. In human bodies, the relationship between your full chest circumference and your wrist and your neck, they aren't corresponding. They're not related. They don't go together. Like they don't get bigger at the same rate and at the same, they're not connected.
No, they're not.
So
There's so many factors,
we can't
right?
we can't compare those two and then just like add the same amount of increase in stitches, or it just doesn't work.
It just doesn't work. No, yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, that's something that we talk about in the boot camp, and we'll talk about that in the warm up as well, about choosing. This leads into something else, right? Where people are like, well, if I can't use a percentage system, that means I might need something else. And so that's when people start looking into size charts. And you and I have talked for hours.
Size charts
in our lives, and I imagine we have many hours more in our future. But yeah, choosing a size chart is like super important, and we'll definitely be talking about that, how to choose an effective size chart, what a good one looks like, how to evaluate it. I just had a DM a couple days ago. Somebody was asking me, they're like, "What's the best size chart?" And I was just like, "Oh, we don't play with the best size charts around here." I understand that everybody wants something that they can rely on, something that is accurate, and those are all very achievable goals. But you will never hear me talking about something as being like the best size chart, because we know that as soon as we start talking about that, that means there's like a best body, and that's not how I go about my life, evaluating people. So,
So who can grade? Like if we come back to that a little bit, if you're creating a pattern for hand knitters and crocheters, do you, like, you're a designer, do you have to know how to grade? Like who does this in our industry? What does this job fall to?
Typically, in my experience, it falls to the designer. I know there are designers who outsource it to their tech editors, and I, personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable not understanding grading and also outsourcing it. I think it's really important for both designers and editors in this industry to at least have an understanding of what's going on, so that they can kind of keep an eye out for what's happening in a pattern, how it's changing. Because as we've been kind of touching on a lot of this stuff, but as you grade a pattern, things change, right? As you go through the size chart. So there's formulas that we can use, and we can kind of like generate a pattern. We can generate some numbers very quickly, but after we've generated that, then we need to go back, we need to look, we need to use our human eyes and our judgment to make sure that nothing wonky is happening, and that we're compensating to make sure that things are visually consistent between sizes. That's like a really key goal with grading, is to make sure that everything remains visually consistent between sizes.
So we have a great question that just came up in the chat. Let me throw it here. Monisha asks, is grading different in knitting and crochet? And I think this is one I didn't even think of asking. It's so important to think about this.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. At its core, grading is a process that is craft agnostic. It does not matter if it is knit, it does not matter if it is crochet, it does not matter if it is woven. The core principles that I am teaching are applicable to all of this. The difference really comes in when we start to consider the abilities of like a fabric. So what are its properties, I mean. If you have a knit fabric, for example, that's more stretchy than a crochet or than a woven fabric. So that stretch is something that you need to keep in mind. If you are working with specific fibers that maybe are known for stretching or don't have a lot of recovery, or maybe they have a ton of recovery, those are all things that you're going to take into account when you are designing the sample. And then again, you'll probably keep in mind while you are working your way through the grading process. That's why I say this for knitters, it's for crocheters. These are people who I'm speaking to directly. These are the kind of examples that I'm going to be using. So that's what really makes it for crocheters. But yeah, at its core, this is very, very craft agnostic.
And I would think it would make a difference in like when you go to write the instructions. Like you're going to have, of course, you're going to have completely different pattern writing, but the actual grading of making the sizes of the garments bigger is not different.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally.
So we're getting a lot more questions. Thank you everyone for participating. Let me pull up the next one. The next question is, which of the most important measures if I want to choose a pattern for my body? I'm a larger person. So like I would say, Susanna, like you're asking, what is the important measurements on my body if I'm choosing a pattern? I'm thinking that's what that means.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's how I was reading that too. So you're going to look at two things. So if we're talking about a sweater, which I'm guessing we probably are, you're going to want to look at the cross shoulder, and you're going to want to look at the full bust or the waist, right? I'm not completely sure about your personal body type, but it's important for us to know the shoulder width because that's kind of like the resting point for the sweater. So that's really important as far as like what kind of support your garment is going to give you. And from there, if you choose a sweater based on your cross shoulder, then you can look at what the other measurements in your full chest and in the waist are and see what kind of modifications you need from there, right? If it's going to require a lot of modifications through those, measurements and maybe possibly others, you might want to choose a different pattern, or a different size. If you go based on your full chest and based on your full waist, then you're going to look at how far off is something like your cross shoulder, because that's going to inform you again of what kind of modifications you need to make. So when you're choosing a pattern, you are looking for places of support and you're looking for what you are most likely going to have to alter, what are you going to have to modify. And what you're looking for in choosing the correct size pattern for you is something that is going to be easiest to modify, because that is the goal of the pattern, to give you something that is relatively easy to modify.
And I just wanted to add, Susanna, it's super important before you purchase a pattern to make sure it has a schematic. So it has those tables of measures for you to know what the finished garment size is going to be so you can compare it to your own body. Don't purchase a pattern that doesn't have the information up front and also isn't written in your general size range. There are patterns, if you are a larger size, that are not size inclusive. In other words, they're not written for larger body shapes and sizes. So be cautious as a consumer to only buy patterns that are going to meet your need. So
yeah, that's a really good note, Sarah, because of course everything I just said would be completely useless if you don't have access to that information.
If pattern's not even designed for your body shape and size. And that's part of why I'm so excited to talk to Julie today, is she's enthusiastic and I'm enthusiastic about people creating patterns for larger bodies. This is why we do what we do, is we feel like this is a part of our industry that needs to change. The sizing in crochet and knitting patterns needs to be inclusive of more body shapes and sizes. So
yeah.
Let's go to this is a great question. Look at this one. Are there any books or resources you can recommend for someone wanting to start tech editing and eventually get into garments and pattern grading? I mostly do amigurumi at the moment. So you're a crocheter, Angela, I'm assuming.
Yeah, amigurumi. I know, Sarah, you've got an incredible list of resources on your website.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, some of the books. So if you want to get into tech editing, obviously you got to go to the Tech Editor Hub and sign up for the Learn to Tech Edit course. There is a good book specifically on tech editing that's written by Kate Atherley.
Mhm.
If you want to know
Pattern
more,
writing. Yeah.
yep, I think that's like the book about knitting pattern writing.
Mhm.
If you're looking specifically for a book,
Mhm.
and if you want a good book about pattern, or not even just pattern, but just like garment construction, Shirley Payton's, gosh, what is that? The name of it? It's
Knitwear design workshop.
workshop. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, but Shirley Payton, if you search for Shirley Payton, her book will come right up. It's a great resource.
Yeah. It's Paden. Yeah. And here's the thing is, Angela, we're talking a lot about knitting, but the principles behind tech editing and grading really cross both crafts. They are not exclusive to one or the other. So you can learn how to grade the stitches are stitches in that sense, and they have
Yeah,
to cover a human body. So I would look up some of the more design reference books for knitters, and they definitely can cross over into crochet.
right.
So I hope that helps. So let's see. Another question is, do we take blocking of the garment into consideration when grading? What a great question.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, so this particular class, the warm up and the boot camp are focusing exclusively on grading. But yeah, this should come a little bit earlier in the design process. So, like I was saying before, you probably start with a sketch, and after the sketch, you got to move into creating a swatch. And so that swatch should absolutely have been blocked. And then before you start the grading process, if we're doing everything by the book, we're following best practices, you should have a finished sample in front of you to work with. So that sample should be blocked, washed, anything that's going to happen to it in its lifetime. So yeah, very, very important. But yeah, that comes before, right, we get into like the actual grading. So like the grading is really about how we're going to take this finished sample that we know and we love and apply what we see to the size chart that we've chosen, and yeah, using our spreadsheets to generate those numbers. That's really where the grading happens. But yeah, that's how we take the blocked swatch into consideration.
So Julie just gave you, like, she just gave you the class how you grade. Walked you right through it. Now,
I
there's
can't
a
help
lot,
it.
there's a lot more to it than what she said. There's some nuances there. She just like went, shoom. She gave you the runway view. That was awesome. So let me just check Facebook and see if there's any other questions. Do you have anything else that you'd like to mention while we're here?
Just that I'm really excited. Last I checked, I think we're like cruising. There's going to be definitely at least 250, if not more, people who are going through this year. So that's super exciting for me. Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is going to be the biggest warm up I've done to date. So yeah, I'm really excited because last year was the first year I tried this out, and it was really good. And I'm really excited to see what kind of work people start churning out, because while we were doing the workshop last year, several people, they started designing their first garments. Some people started grading things, and it was just really awesome. And it's just like a super supportive, fun atmosphere. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for everybody.
So let me go ahead and put this into a caption so people can see it. Your pattern grading warm-up is from what date to what date?
It is from next week. Oh my gosh, now I'm blanking. It is
January. It's the It's Monday, right?
Yeah, it's on Monday. So no, that's not the 23rd. That's 2 weeks from now.
16.
It's the 16th. Thank you, math.
I
We
have
kick
to
off on
pull up
January 16th.
my calendar here.
Mm-hmm.
So
we
it
kick off
starts.
on January.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, it's January 16th, 7 p.m. That's Eastern time, so New York City time, and that's our first warm-up shop. Next two will be on Wednesday and then Friday again at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So that's how you join us live. I'm going to be recording each one of these workshops. I'm going to be posting the replays as soon as possible. So if you can't join us live for whatever reason, you can catch the replay. And that replay is going to be available for a full week after we wrap on Friday. So you have until January 27th to get all caught up.
And for those of you who are on YouTube, the information to sign up for the pattern grading warm-up is down in the description, and I'll throw it on Facebook after we're done with this live here. Let me see if there's any other questions here. Angela asked, when's the next tech editor course for crochet? I think we're going to open next month, so make sure you're on that wait list for the tech editor hub. If you're on my newsletter, if you're signed up for my newsletter, you're going to hear about everything. And I just wanted to thank Julie. Thank you for coming and talking to us about grading, pattern grading. This is super exciting. If you guys would like to follow her, this is her website, julieatwork.com. That's simple, Julie at work. I love it. And I would highly recommend that you get on Julie's newsletter. She just put out a trend report. Can you tell me a little bit about that too?
Sure. Yeah. I just published my my yearly trend report, and this is again specifically for knitters and for crocheters, and it's really funny because again I started doing it here, and in this past year, trend reporting itself has kind of become a trend. But is my whole idea with putting out trend reports specifically for knitters and crocheters is that this is something that's gonna like cut through that noise. Like I'm not putting out a trend report to make you jump or try to like make you stress or anything. Like what I love about trend reporting, what I love about research is this is inspired and I see new things. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to sift through what's out there and find those really neat bits that I think might be inspiring.
Yeah. So I think that's all the questions I got for today. And I give you my gratitude, Julie, and I wish you the best for your pattern grading warm-up and your boot camp. And this is just fantastic. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I really do appreciate it.
And if you all have questions for Julie, feel free to throw them into the comments on all the places that I'm streaming here, and I'll make sure she gets them. And we'll see you guys around. Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. See you soon.